Welcome to episode 12 of the Wins Alive interview series. I'm Amie Sheridan. The purpose of this series is to elevate the visibility of women in sports and entertainment by creating a connected environment for authentic storytelling. Thank you all for joining us today as we interview influential leaders across sports, entertainment, and beyond. And today, I have my second Chief Revenue Officer of this series, Catherine Carlson of the Philadelphia Eagles. Welcome, Catherine, to the Wins Live interview series.
Thank you, Amie, and thank you for having me today. I'm excited to be here.
I'm very excited to have you. And let us give everyone your quick bio. So Catherine is responsible for driving revenue for the Philadelphia Eagles, the NFL team here in Philadelphia, which, by the way, is where I'm from. Not many of our guests have been local, so I love that. Catherine drives revenue for the team primarily through new sponsorship, media, and premium opportunities. And might I say, you certainly did this the right way, right? As my friend Raven Jemison said in her episode, how do you get to the top, right? You generate revenue, you follow the money, right? So, welcome, Catherine, and it's a pleasure to have you today.
Thank you. And Raven is a great friend through the NBA days, so happy to see her doing well too.
Yes, right, in her role with the Bucks. So let's talk first about your role with the Eagles. I know this is not your first role, and we'll get to that in a second. Tell us how things are shaping up for the 21-22 season with the team. And, secondly, your LinkedIn profile says you're hiring, which is amazing news.
Yes, it is. It's a good thing.
Yeah, and I'd love to hear a little bit about some of the roles you're looking to fill and just to get an idea of, what's happening, at the team level and, within the Eagles, but also maybe your vantage point across the league, right, as we build back up.
Yeah, I think we're excited to be back. I think that's probably my banner statement is, we're in full planning mode. The NFL's back. We're going to have full stadiums, 70,000 screaming Eagles fans. It's a great cause for celebration, especially after the last, 13 or 14 months operating and running a sales division from home. And what I did realize is we can do that. Although I think I'd prefer to be in the office and spending time with our clients and fans. So that's a great thing. So there's great optimism around the NFL. The timing of our season means that we've got a few months ahead of us, and the current COVID situation will hopefully be even more optimistic, and that we are back to business as usual. And I think, after the disruption of COVID, I think we can handle any challenge or issue that's thrown at us. So coming back to the office, going back to the stadium, seeing clients and fans again, this is a great step forward. So we're excited about that. But then, going back to the stadium, that means we're staffing up. And, we had a bit of a break from new hires for a little while there. And I think it's exciting that right now we're back to business. We're starting off with sort of that entry level where we're hiring our full complement of interns that help us and are a really crucial part of our operations on a season-to-season basis. But we're actually also hiring a senior account manager on our corporate activation team. And we had one of our staff move to Chicago, and so we're backfilling her position. But I think it's been really interesting, and maybe this is a trend across the industry, is that that open position, we had hundreds and hundreds of applicants. So either the Eagles is really perceived a cool place to work, or there's a desire to work in the NFL. But I think your question about what are you seeing across the industry, go on any LinkedIn site or job hiring, you'll see a lot of positions opening up, and a lot of them are actually in the corporate partnership sales and sales divisions. So to your earlier point, revenue is something that the teams are looking for right now, and they're staffing up in these areas and bringing back people or adding to the staff to get us back into business.
Absolutely. And, just a piggyback question on that. COVID changed the landscape, and certainly the sponsorship landscape and the activation landscape could not have been the same in an environment where there was no live product. Coming out of that, and as you ramp up to the exciting, full stadiums and, everything that we love about the NFL season, what might change about how a sponsorship or a partnership looks, activation looks now? Are there any common themes that you're seeing, or what the partners are kind of talking about or asking for?
Yeah, look, I think we learned a lot in the last year. We did a lot of virtual events. We created new content. We were actually, I think the one silver lining of COVID and working through it is it actually forced the teams and properties to be more creative and innovative. So, looking at how you can work with your partners to create value when perhaps, you don't have fans in the stadium. And so that led to a lot of innovation. And even in operational aspects of our business, the Lincoln Financial Field, it was not a cashless stadium. And going through this process, it took us 4 months to flip the entire stadium for those 3 games that we had to cashless. And that in a normal year probably would have taken us a slow burn. It may have taken a year, or it may have been a phased approach. And so the COVID actually forced that innovation and expedited certain projects, which I think was a really interesting byproduct of going through this past year. And I think you also had to look at new categories that came into the sponsorship world that were perhaps weren't even a consideration in the past. Any products that help with safety, any products that help with contactless, cashless, innovative products or technology that help us get our fans back, they all of a sudden became hot categories, and clients and companies and brands that we perhaps would not have even thought about reaching out to in the past. So I think it's really evolved our industry and created, quite frankly, it's created new opportunities.
Absolutely. Cashless, contactless, all of these companies that were there. They were there positioned, for this. And then I love it. I love hearing, the new categories emerging and all of the learnings and the innovation, and how you say that we turned this in 4 months, and in normal times we would have experienced the slow burn because it probably wouldn't have been the top item on the list.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So thanks for that insight. I think that's really great stuff. On to your leadership journey a bit. So your story, coming up through sports and entertainment. You spent 11 seasons at the Magic. I thought it was interesting that 11 years at Disney. So 11, is that?
I guess it's a magical number.
It's a magical number. So 11 years at the Magic, 11 years at Walt Disney World, both in corporate partnerships. I'm sure you have a ton of learnings from those 2 experiences. But what would you say are some of the things you bring to your work, some of the experiences that have really been instrumental in making you the leader that you are today?
Yeah, I'll start with my Disney experience. Such a unique opportunity to work for a brand like Disney. And, they are one of the most incredibly, well-known brands around the world. And I think the influence of Disney's really left a lasting impact or legacy on my career. Because when I was at Disney, I think I really learned the value of providing excellent world-class customer service. And I also learned a little bit about the power of storytelling. And I spent many, many years working with the Walt Disney World Imagineers, who are the guys and women that create all the rides and experiences and create the theme parks, and learning about how their process and how they go about storytelling. And so, moving over to the Magic, and we were opening a brand new stadium, how do you bring that storytelling into a brand new stadium rather than just putting signs up everywhere and calling it sponsorship? How do you create experiential spaces? How do you innovate? How do you create things that the fans want to be part of, new spaces to experience and be part of? So that was really exciting. But back to the customer service piece, I think one of the interesting things coming from Walt Disney World to the Orlando Magic was this concept of how do you create a world-class experience at a sporting event. And being in Orlando, the capital of, hospitality and theme parks and sporting events, we had to compete, quite frankly, with Disney. And so we actually put all our cast members or our staff at the Magic through Disney training. And it really made an interesting impact. And, we actually put everyone from the ticket taker to the parking attendant. And so their first experience coming to a game was a positive.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome to the Amway Center. Have a great game. Enjoy the game. Have a magical day. Like, it's just those simple words that put a smile on your face. You're not expecting that when you arrive at the stadium. And I tell you a funny story. So our first game, we had Commissioner David Stern, rest in peace, and he came to the game. He's a New Yorker. And so anyone who's listening to this, you know what I'm saying. And so he came up to us and said, if one more bleeping person comes up to me and welcomes me here and says, have a magical day, I'm going to lose my mind. And in a funny kind of way, it was the backhanded comment on, customer service is important. Everyone's drinking the Kool-Aid. Everyone knows that we need to treat our guests as our friends, as our family, and they'll come back. And I think that's really important. And it really sticks in my mind, a quote from Walt Disney back in the day. And he said, do what you do well, and they will want to see it again, and they'll bring their friends. So if you think about that, that's return customers. And so this applies to any business. If you don't just go that extra inch, go that extra mile for your partners or your clients or your guests, you'll have them for customers for life. And I think that's a really important thing. And I always tell my staff now at the Eagles, like, how do you create magical moments for your prospects, for your clients, for your partners? Because if you do, they'll remember it. And that just, you build relationships. It's this whole foundation of building relationships and growing partnerships. It's that customer service. So I think that was just sort of the foundation from a Disney standpoint. But even before joining Disney and the Magic, I worked in Australia in multiple sporting organizations, and quite often I was the only woman in the office. But I'll never forget my first class at doing sports management degree in Australia. There was a professor, and he said something that really stuck in my mind, which probably is why I have such perseverance. Is he said, half of you in this room will have to work twice as hard to get half as far. And I'm thinking, what's he talking about? And what I realized, well, who's he referring to? Was he talking about the women in the room? I thought, wow, this is not the start to my sports management career that I was hoping for. But I think it really stuck in my mind, and it made me realize I perhaps need to try a little harder to get to the next step in my career. And, and I think that leads to networking. And I know, Amie, this is something you're very passionate about, and building your brand and networking within your industry. Before you need help, you build your networking. I think men do it really well. I think women are growing into their own opportunities and realizing that networking early on, even when you're at college, is such an important thing. And I'll tell you a little secret. I actually was open to this opportunity at the Eagles through a connection on LinkedIn. So I had a recruiter reach out to me via LinkedIn. And so what I tell a lot of my staff is LinkedIn is a really good tool. It helps you build your brand. It keeps you on top of what's happening in the industry, but you're also networking with your peers, other women, other men. It doesn't matter. You're networking and you're gaining that knowledge. To me, LinkedIn is, you become a student of the industry. You're on the pulse of what's going on. And so a lot of different things that I've learned in my time, but there's some of the key things that I think have really done well for me. And I share that feedback with my team whenever I get the opportunity, or potential mentees.
Incredible. The quotes that you shared, thank you. I love you pulling those out, and your training has paid off. I mean, your storytelling is so polished. You brought the quotes in, you're pulling out all the tricks. I can't agree with you more. How do you create a world-class experience at a sporting event? If you use that as a starting point in everything that you do and apply it to how you create true partnerships, right? I think there's definitely been more of a call to action, I think, for the teams, and you can speak to this better than I can, to create authentic partnerships that are a win-win on both sides of the table. And I can certainly kind of see how coming out of COVID, a lot of that might happen organically with this new category that you talk about. But I love how you set the table there with that. And LinkedIn is magic. Okay. We're talking about a magical experience. I love LinkedIn. I mean, I think from the moment I discovered LinkedIn at the NHL as a young person in the sports business, I'm thinking to myself, are you serious? I can make contact with anyone. And then I think the thing that has really become apparent, and it's something that I do all of the time, is if you can be seen and heard on that platform, you're building a network by simply being seen and heard. You know what I mean? Like, you're building relationships.
I also think taking the courage to take that first step and reach out to someone that perhaps you would have no opportunity to have an interaction with. And so I'm pretty good when people send me a note on LinkedIn. I'll at least try and reply. I may not get to everyone because I do get hit quite a bit, but I try and take the effort. Or if someone takes that extra effort to not just say, hey, I want to join your network, but give you a little story as to why, I'm more inclined to say, yes, I think you would be a great addition to my network, or I want to network with you. And so I think taking that extra effort is worth the extra time.
Absolutely. You have to include a note in your request to connect if you don't know the person. Like that, it's a rule.
Definitely.
Okay. So story time, segment part 3 of this interview series. And you've already told a couple of stories, which is incredible. So now you're from Australia.
Mm-hmm.
And it's no surprise then that you're a rugby fan, because I think here we sort of associate rugby with Australia. And but you shared a fun fact with me before the interview that I think most people would not know, right? They know you're from Australia, but they don't know that you are a certified level 1 rugby coach, right?
Absolutely. Who would have thought?
So my question is, how and why did you become a coach? Tell us a little bit about that. And is rugby still a big part of your life now that you're here in the States?
Well, there was a method to my madness of becoming a rugby league coach, and I'll tell you why I did. My first full-time job in sports was in rugby league in the town of Melbourne in Australia, if you're familiar with Australia. And our organization's goal was really to develop and grow the sport in the state that we were in. It was very dominated by a different code of football called Australian rules football. And so we were trying to grow the sport in the state to ultimately have a professional rugby league team in Melbourne. And ultimately now they have a team called the Melbourne Storm, but this was 25 years ago, nearly 30 years ago. So I was working in a small office. There was only 4 of us. I was the only woman in the office. And I was quite often questioned, what does a woman know about rugby league? Okay, so for this young woman who's trying to start her career in sports, and I keep getting questioned just because of my gender, like, what do you know about rugby league? And so it was actually a credibility issue that I was experiencing early in my career. So I actually signed up and signed up to do the rugby league certifications because I wanted to, I was curious. I wanted to be a student. I wanted to understand the sport. I wasn't an expert in it, but it was an instant credibility builder. It was also a conversational piece, and it really gained my sort of status in the office. Is like, oh, she does know about rugby league. Actually, she's a rugby league coach. Did I ever coach as a rugby league coach? No. However, I'm so much more knowledgeable. And so it's funny how I started in rugby league and now I'm in the NFL. But I think it isn't part of my life now. I actually was flipping channels on the last weekend, and I came across a rugby league game, and I sat there and watched and realized, oh, I really do miss watching it. We don't get to see it too much here in the States. So that's my rugby league story. So now I'm not involved with rugby league, but I've switched gears because I've got to keep some Australian heritage here. Is I'm actually a volunteer independent board director for USA Cricket.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been doing this for the last almost 3 years, and just helping develop the sport in a country that's perhaps not as familiar with cricket as the rest of the world. So that's how I'm keeping my heritage and roots back to Australia, is by doing some voluntary work with cricket.
Very cool. That's hysterical. So there's definitely a theme, right? You came up through the sports industry in Australia. A lot of times you were the only woman in the room. You needed credibility, because you were the only woman in the room. So you went and got your coach certification, which is hysterical. But you then had the credibility to say, hey, no, I have my certification. And you know what? I think it also shows that you did what it took, right, to achieve the credibility that you felt that you needed to achieve. And kind of back to one of your first stories about the guy that said, you're going to have to work twice as hard as everybody else, is part of that is that credibility, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I think there's a million other things that come into play there. Like, for those of us who go out and have a family, then it becomes harder. Right. But I love the connection between those two stories. So women in sports, and I know that you are passionate about this because you are one of the leading faces in the Women in Philly Sports group, which I'm a part of and which I love. But the Eagles executive team was recognized in the Wall Street Journal, which is a big deal, for the number of senior executives that are women, right? And you're one of the leading faces. Mm-hmm. In that story. So can you share with us your take on how to authentically infuse diversity, right? So women, but also diversity, equity, inclusion into a professional sports organization like the Eagles from your vantage point?
Yeah, look, I definitely did my homework before, taking on the role at the Eagles. I think it initially was attractive to me because the Eagles had a commitment to women in leadership roles. So when you have role models, that permeates down through the entire organization. And also from a recruitment standpoint, people see that as, wow, they have women at the table, at the leadership table. So I think that was very attractive. And it was funny that when I did my research, and admittedly this was 2 years ago, when I looked at the NFL as a whole, only about 20% of senior executives, like VPs and above, were women. And so I thought, well, that's not a good stat. And only 23 out of the 32 teams actually had a woman at a VP level or above. And so the Eagles were just this outlier and an exception. And I think a lot has changed in 2 years. I see a lot of progression in our industry. I see a lot of movement in the NFL, but it was great to see that we were sort of ahead of the curve from that perspective. And actually this past week on our football operations team, we just promoted one of our women on the football ops team to VP of football operations. And so now Catherine Ray, she's actually the highest ranking personnel executive in the NFL as a woman. Oh. So that was just says a lot. We also promoted one of our coordinators to a pro scout. So there's just a lot of movement, and it shows a theme. It's not just lip service. It's something that's real. It's something that I'm incredibly proud to be part of. And I think it's not just that we have the title or a seat at the table. We're actually shaping the strategy of our organization, and I think that's where the fun begins. And it's a great to be part of that. And having worked for the majority of my career in sports, that's not always the case. And sometimes the core barrier for women is that there's just not enough senior leaders in professional sports. But I do think that's evolving, and it's really nice to see that'll continue to evolve. I think it's a trend. And then on the diversity side, look, I think it's front and center. It's a social issue in our community, and I think the Eagles, we can always do better on the diversity side. And one of our initiatives this past in the spring is we actually did a 5-week diversity leadership group series. So we actually brought in a select group of minority candidates to go through more of learning and educational opportunities, sort of meet as a group with different departments, learn about the different functions within the Eagles. But also for us, it's building a pipeline of potential candidates for our, entry-level positions or future positions as they become available. So for us, it was getting exposure to a broader range of candidates, but also looking towards the future when we have opportunities, we have interacted with a group. And I think that's a great initiative that our HR department started, and we'll continue to tap into that group of incredible candidates, and hopefully we can get some in the pipeline upcoming. But I think it's it's evolving. I think that's the best way to describe it. And I think the Eagles are ahead of the curve, especially on the gender side.
Yes, I think they are as well. And I absolutely love it. Seeing as though I've been an Eagles fan my whole life, I've worked in sports for a long time as well. And it makes me feel proud to know that here in Philly, we're ahead of the curve on something like this in professional sports, because I do think it is something that is evolving, and I think things are happening and there's a lot of movement here across the space. But
well, I'm actually incredibly excited. So when Erica Gunnerman and I started, bringing a group of women in Philly sports together on a sort of a quarterly basis, we were amazed at how many women would sign up just to hear. Like we do a lot of some professional development. We'll have a speaker, we'll do breakout groups, we'll create networking opportunities. But I think the one we did about maybe a few months back, we sent out an invite, and look, it's Zoom culture right now. And it was about a week. So I wasn't doing a good job in terms of giving people notice, but within 24 hours, we had 70 women that work in sports in this region jump in and join this event. And so it was just really refreshing to say, wow, there's that many women in this greater Philadelphia region that are craving this opportunity to get together. And so we thought that was just a really good indicator of how things are moving in the industry overall.
I would say absolutely. And I would say yes. When you guys invited me to be part of that, I looked at the list and I thought, oh, wow. Wow. That's a lot of people to get in that short of time frame. I mean, it's really impressive. Imagine if you had, given it more time, there would be, maybe even double that number. But it is so nice and refreshing as a woman in sports in Philadelphia to see that kind of response, and that many people out there that are looking for, to connect and network with each other across the teams.
Definitely.
All right. So final question, and this is our wins question. What do you have planned? What's coming up for you this year, next year with the Eagles, but also on a personal level? I like hearing stories from both sides, and, and how can we cheer you on as you work toward those wins?
Well, I think I'm excited for the next few months to return back to the office, and spending face time with my team, my clients, who I feel like I've become BFFs via Zoom, but I think it's time to quit Zoom and get back to meeting in person. So I think that's an exciting thing that I've planned for the next couple of months. And then obviously welcoming back fans and sponsors to Eagles football. I think that's going to be fun. We're really focused on some fun activities and ways to welcome back all our stakeholders, our fans, everything. So, we want to make a bit of fanfare about coming back to the stadium. It's just been too long since we've seen all those faces. But then the one thing that happened during COVID is we did quite a few renovations over at the Lincoln Financial Field. And, so we're opening a whole bunch of new spaces. Some of them I'm really excited to see. With fans inside them, we're doing a huge membership only lounge called the Foxbet Lounge, and we're renaming our plaza out the front of the stadium, the Pepsi Plaza. We're creating some new clubs, so that'll be all fun to bring that all to opening day. It's going to be a big day. But on the business side, we're focusing on some new categories. There's a lot of buzz around blockchain and NFTs and crypto. That's just a very interesting category to me right now. I'm definitely, as I always say, I'm a student of the industry. I'm educating myself on this very complex subject and category. So that's going to be very interesting over the next 6 months to see how that unfolds in professional sports. You're starting to see things that are happening, and we're trying to assess what's right for us. And then the other business thing that I'm excited about is we're launching a business a B2B concept, and we're calling it the Eagles Business League. And so that's really focused on bringing our clients together, doing business together, doing a better job at really bringing the existing clients that we have together and seeing what comes of that. So excited about that. And then on the personal side, yeah, summer's here. I've got a teenager that's about to go to high school next year, so that's exciting. It's overwhelming at the same time, and trying to get back into a routine. That's going to be a challenge. So I think I need to be cheering everyone on. It's whether it's kids or whether it's your colleagues, whether it's your family members, your spouse, whoever. That's going to be a big adjustment for everyone, and definitely going to be cheering for that to happen and get back to a somewhat pre-COVID life, I guess I could describe it.
Right, routine. Doesn't that sound good?
It does.
Well, thanks so much, Catherine. And we're all cheering you on. What you're doing is amazing. And I'm so proud to have you here in Philly, leading the charge at the Philadelphia Eagles. And thank you for all those stories that you shared. Really amazing stories. So in closing, our next episode and the last episode of the season before we take a break for the summer, I will be joined by Sue Thaden, CEO of From Now On, also a firm believer in the Walt Disney way. So I'll have to get into that with her. But finally, this interview was powered by WINS, our membership community for women influencing sports and entertainment. To learn more about us, visit us at wins.media/membership. And thank you, Catherine.